Ying Ying and Lili. They're the two giant pandas who for the past decade have been refusing to mate. That is until earlier this year when the two love bears finally took the plunge and were married in a traditional Catholic ceremony. Hear how the two pandas managed to stay true to their Lord and Savior in order to enjoy some guilt-free sex as a wedded couple. From the Onion and Onion Public Radio, I'm Leslie Price, and this is The Topical. Don't worry, there's also a lot of bad news to cover after we get done with all this bear fucking, so stay with us. Some exciting news from Hong Kong's conservation center, Ocean Park. After refusing to engage in sexual activity for 10 years due to their devout Catholic faith, the center's pandas, Ying Ying and Lili, finally made it after officially tying the knot in a traditional Catholic ceremony. The two pandas, Ying Ying, a male age 12, and Lili, age 10, made the rare promise to each other not to mate until they were sanctioned as husband and wife by a Catholic priest. OPR correspondent Alan Potts joins us now with the latest.
Thanks for having me, Leslie.
Alan, there's certainly been a lot of joy around this long-awaited moment. Can you tell us a little about the pandas' pressures to mate and how their faith has played a role in this?
Absolutely. The two pandas have been a couple for nearly 6 years, which is about as long as they've been at the conservation center. Conservationists have pressured them to mate to help the panda population, but due to the pandas' devout Catholic faith, the two refuse to partake in any sexual activity outside the holy bonds of marriage.
It is 2020, though. Couldn't they just do the deed if they knew they were going to marry each other anyway? You know, test the car before you drive it, so to speak?
Well, many follow that line of thinking, yes. But according to sources close to the pandas, Ying and Li both feared for their souls and the eternal damnation they could be bringing upon themselves if they acted on their carnal desires. They both believed that sex was meant only for the act of creating life under the holy bond of marriage.
Now, you mentioned they were facing pressures to mate. What kind exactly?
Well, at first, the handlers would leave them alone together for extended periods of time when they were both in heat. But according to sources, being put in that tempting environment just allowed their faith to grow stronger. Here's head conservationist Li Chen.
We spent years showing them other pandas mating, pumping putative female pheromones into the male's living quarters, and even tried sensual music at one point. We thought they were perhaps developmentally challenged, but we simply did not realize how serious maintaining chastity was to the pandas. To see such a pious act of restraint in today's times was remarkable.
And did they ever come close to breaking their promises to God?
There was some finger and mouth stuff one week, but they clearly felt guilty about it. The whole month afterward, both self-flagellated long into the night.
And how did park officials finally convince them to take the plunge and tie the knot?
Well, it had to be a real Catholic ceremony in a church done by a priest, so they needed to be transported by crate. They also required the ceremony to be in Latin, but all in all, it was a beautiful service. Here's audio from the very end of the ceremony.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. May the Lord's blessing be upon you. I now pronounce you Panda and Panda.
Oh, baby, they're really getting after it.
Yeah. Reports from those in attendance said the mating only lasted about 15 seconds, but they're hoping it will be better when it's time to mate again next year.
Well, if my parents are any indication, Ying and Li won't be happy until they have 14 kids to dump their insecurities onto when their children are most vulnerable. Thanks for the report, Alan. That's OPR's Alan Potts. Back in a moment.
911, what's your emergency?
I need help. There's an African-American man in the park threatening me.
We're sending an officer. What's your location, ma'am?
That was the 911 call placed by Birmingham resident Kelly Brosnan, a white woman who was taking a walk in the park by herself when she says she was harassed in broad daylight by a statue of black civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. OPR correspondent Marcy Hammond has more. Marcy?
Thanks, Leslie. Kelly Brosnan says she was minding her own business on a socially distanced walk through a local park this week when she realized her path was suddenly blocked by a black man statue. Video of the incident has gone viral on social media, but it appears to show that the statue of Dr. King may not have actually done anything wrong. Take a listen.
I said, excuse me, you're blocking the path. Why are you looking at me like that? Stop it. Don't you come any closer or I will call the police and tell them that there is a very dark and very shiny African-American effigy harassing me.
Oh, well, that's ridiculous. That statue was just sitting there minding its own business. It didn't do anything wrong.
Even so, police officers responded to the call shortly after Ms. Brosnan confronted the monument, which unfortunately only escalated the situation.
Sir, you are under arrest. I'm not going to ask you again. Put your hands behind your back or I will have to use force. All right, that's it. Tase him.
Oh, God, that's just terrible. What kind of country do we live in where a statue of a civil rights icon can't just be in the park without getting attacked by police? Are they actually defending this excessive use of force?
They are, Leslie. According to officers on the scene, they saw what they believed to be a weapon in the hand of the statue. Now, that of course just turned out to be the Bible Dr. King was holding, but if it had been a weapon, then things really could have turned out bad.
Well, I suppose that's true. In the heat of the moment, you just sort of have to react.
Well, I spoke with Officer Jim Haskell, who was on the scene that day, and he explained to me that this actually wasn't the first complaint issued against the statue.
We've had reports of this statue hanging around the park in the same spot, rain or shine, at all hours of the day and night. We've even on occasion seen it used as a meeting spot for drug deals. So, frankly, we weren't surprised to discover who the complaint was about.
Well, when they put it that way, that does sound sort of suspicious. Maybe the statue wasn't so innocent after all.
Pair that with Martin Luther King Jr.'s past malfeasance of serving time in a Birmingham jail, and you might even say the police here did the whole community a favor by tearing down the statue and destroying it in the street.
Yeah, it just goes to show there are always two sides to every story. Thank you, Marcy. That's OPR's Marcy Hammond. Back in a moment. Vengeance Rover. That's how NASA is seeking their revenge today, following an unprovoked attack by Mars on their Opportunity rover nearly 2 years ago to the day. According to the space agency, Vengeance rover's mission will be to completely destabilize and obliterate the red planet once and for all in honor of the fallen Opportunity rover. Joining us now to discuss NASA's surprise attack on Mars is OPR's Rebecca Neal.
Hey, Leslie.
Rebecca, this was a shocking piece of news to hear today. I assume Mars was caught off guard too?
Well, that was the idea, although NASA did give the planet 24-hour notice to move itself to another galaxy unreachable by mankind or face deadly consequences. Evidence suggests that Mars has made 0 attempts to follow through on NASA's request, so the assumption is that the planet is ready for all-out war.
And how long has NASA been planning this attack on Mars?
The NASA officials I spoke with said that the organization had been quietly planning ever since a Martian dust storm tragically cut short Opportunity rover's mission in June 2018, which they refer to as the darkest day in NASA's history. But instead of retaliating immediately, they decided to lull the planet into tranquility and attack then.
So what's the plan once Vengeance makes contact? Mars is a giant rock named after the Roman god of war. It's not just going to roll over without a fight.
NASA officials refused to go into any tactical detail, but I did manage to connect with a source on the inside who sent me the engineering logs from Vengeance's testing phase at the NASA base. Have a listen.
Initiating poison test.
Initiated. Vengeance is slowly poisoning the soil while pretending to gather samples.
Let's run it again with the spit feature, please.
Roger that. Vengeance is now disrespecting the surface of Mars by ejecting a small spit-like substance out of the frontal spout.
Beautiful. Engage death mode.
Engaged. Fire blaster at 100%, reaching 5,000 miles in diameter. Initiating gunfire. Initiating maniacal laughter from rover for effect.
Revenge is mine.
Wow, Mars messed with the wrong organization.
That's right. The Vengeance rover is also apparently armed with a photo of Opportunity rover, so it remembers why it's torching a 4.6 billion-year-old planet to dust.
It must have been hard for NASA to be so patient before retaliating.
By all accounts, it was. Here's head engineer Thomas Daines again, who I spoke with after the press conference.
On the day Opportunity rover died, my colleagues had to hold me back from strapping nuclear bombs all over my spacesuit and taking a shuttle directly at that son of a bitch. I wanted justice right away. I wanted to get my hands on that asshole planet and watch it burn. But the longer you wait, the sweeter the reward.
What message do you hope to send to Mars and other planets?
Fuck with our rovers and you get fucked. Period.
Wow, Venus and Jupiter better take heed.
Well, since the attack, sources from all other 7 planets said that they fully support NASA's mission and completely condemn Mars's disgusting attack on Opportunity rover in 2018.
Seems like they want to stay on NASA's good side.
Neptune even offered to hurl itself at Mars if NASA ever needed it, and Venus deployed 3 billion of its rings for NASA to use as reinforcements once Vengeance rover landed.
Well, I look forward to watching the carnage once Vengeance gets to the planet. I've never really liked Mars. It's just kind of sitting there waiting to be colonized, but no one can figure out how to get there safely anyway. So why not just get rid of it altogether and build a planet that we can actually hang out on?
Yeah, good riddance to Mars.
Thanks for the report, Rebecca, and Godspeed to Vengeance rover. May your justice be swift and harsh. We'll be back in a moment. Well, I don't know about you, but that last story got me so hot and bothered, the only thing I can do now is abuse myself with more news. Here's what else you need to know today. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is out of the hospital today after being beaten unconscious by police last week for being out after curfew. Before de Blasio lifted the citywide curfew last weekend, NYPD officers found him out on the street shortly after 9 p.m. on Saturday and beat him to a bloody pulp before pepper spraying his lifeless face. De Blasio has reportedly regained a majority of his motor functions and today thanked the city's police force for beating him within an inch of his life and is applauding them for showing the restraint to not finish him off. And Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is responding to protesters today, ordering that the state statue of Confederate War Commander Robert E. Lee be replaced with a much larger statue of Robert E. Lee. According to those in Georgia close to the situation, the new one is reportedly fucking enormous. And finally, former Iowa congressional representative Steve King is taking up some new hobbies. Since losing his re-election bid, the now out-of-work congressman has reportedly been toiling away in his garage putting the finishing touches on his model Holocaust train set. Can't wait to see how it turns out, Steve. And that's the Topical for today. I'm Leslie Price. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can like and subscribe to The Topical wherever you get your podcast. Unless, of course, you get your podcast from that guy Jerry. We don't do business with him anymore. We had a falling out. I don't want to get into it. And don't forget to tune in next week, where we'll take a look at the 90s pop rock boy band Hanson and find out just how much their family will pay to have the brothers return safe and sound. You won't want to miss it. Quiet! The news doesn't stop just because this YouTube video has. For even more on all the worst things happening in the world right now, listen and subscribe to The Topical on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, you insatiable news freaks.